Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I probably sound more enthusiastic. In fact, I don't know if I sound more enthusiastic than ever, probably just as enthusiastic, and there's a reason for that, why I sound very chirpy. I've had a week off, I've had a bit of time off. I mean, to be fair, it's not all been a reason to be cheerful. My grandmother passed away suddenly, and obviously I had that to deal with, but which wasn't obviously the cause for me being happy. And some of you may know that if you watch the Fundamentals webinar I put together, and it's in the Pro and Foundation course. If not, you can ask me for a copy, I'll send it over. So some of you may have known. And I'm going to be flying off to India, and I've got a lot of stuff going on, so I had to take a week off. The reason I'm so chirpy is because I had a breather, basically, right? You've seen what we've done so far. We have covered, I didn't even realize, it's an insane amount. I am really happy, right? Basically, that I've been able to do this with you and share this and go on this journey with you. And I was looking back, we've just covered everything in so much incredible detail. It's fantastic. I'm so happy with it. We've done and everything has two. It's been so long, I've had to split some of them out into two. The FOMC was like 4 or 5 hours. 4 sections and all of that. But point is, we've done manufacturing in incredible detail. We've done payrolls in so much detail. So this is going to be the last section. In fact, let me get to that. So we've done CPI. We've gone over the FOMC in so much detail. We've gone over GDP in so much detail. Can you see now that's it? That's another reason why I'm so happy. I'm so relieved it's all over. Finally, almost, the theory section. I mean, look, I really do. I know it's difficult for you to go over these things because it's a qualitative piece of work. We're all used to trading. We want to get on the charts. This is very qualitative. Even part one, at least you are building things. This has been real, deep, actual, accumulating knowledge, new knowledge that isn't stuff that, you're not used to it. We all know in this world, everyone wants things that will... things that will trigger our dopamine or whatever, just always looking for entertainment. And people, that's why they love those things on charts, and they think that, and people know this, right? That's why they entice you in by saying, hey, you got to look at charts, and that's why things move. You're now realizing actually there's a lot going on off the charts, which is this, that is driving the chart. Okay, and I never really appreciated that until I got deep into this properly and gave myself the space to learn. What do I mean by that? That's why I said, look, week 2 is inflation week. Before, I used to be looking at so many things in this week. Now I just focus on inflation. It gives me the space to actually learn what is going on in week 2. Right? We'll talk about this during analysis, because after this we will do not a lot of analysis, because you're probably starting to see. I've given you so much detail. You don't really need me to do analysis with you, because a lot of this is going to now make a lot of sense, and you'll be able to observe it. Because you will have that space. In week 2, for example, you'll be focusing just on inflation rather than worrying about 5 different things and wondering which one is moving the market. You now know, well, it's probably inflation, right? So let me understand the impact, and that's how you start to learn and accumulate knowledge on your 6 to 12 month business plan. And these things are so dynamic, it's very difficult to obviously do analysis in a template format and say, hey, when inflation goes up, the market does this. It doesn't work like that. You can see them. You'll notice as you're observing the market, I'll talk a lot about this in the analysis section, when inflation is coming out, the market will always have different reactions to it. So it's your job to put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, you know what? Recently, the market's been reacting like this to inflation, so that's what I'm expecting going forward if we have a similar print. And do you see what I mean? So a lot of the analysis, it's going to be more obvious to you now by virtue of the fact of how I've gone through this with you. That's why I organized it in such a way and make it more easy for you, so you can learn through observation. The point is, right, we've covered everything, and we're coming now to, you see, one thing we've got left to cover, retail sales, which we're going to do in this section. And I'll talk to you about this a little bit towards the end, but it's really, really important that you don't make the mistake of just watching the videos and saying, hey, Envy told us this and that's fine, and now we understand that piece of data, because that's not the case. The next 6 months, ideally what you would have done, you saw with things like manufacturing, for example, covered it in so much detail. After finishing the manufacturing section, I can't remember how long it was very, very long, a couple of hours, maybe longer. You should be going back to you should be taking a week off, going back to the ISM website, maybe 2 weeks, researching the ISM website, checking, Envy's told us this, does it make sense? Do I agree with him? I'm going to go on the ISM website. These are how the best traders succeed, is by having curiosity, because they're passionate about it. And I know you all are, that's why you're doing this course. And you can probably see my passion coming through as well. Why is that? Why do I sit here and still enjoy so much teaching you guys all of this stuff? It's because I enjoy it, okay? And that's what you need to kind of start doing. You need to just enjoy it for what it is, rather than because of, hey, you know what? I need to find the secret to this manufacturing data, and that's what's going to teach me how to trade and move the market and all of that. And yeah, ultimately that is the goal, but it shouldn't, that should just be the end. There should be a bridge between that and what you're doing now. To get you there, it has to be developing an understanding, because you love developing an understanding, right? Even if it's going to give you nothing at the end of it, it will, of course it will. But you see, that's more just an after effect. Right now, you should just be engrossing yourself in all this stuff because you love it, right? Because you're like, hey, interest me. I'm interested in manufacturing. Oh, that fascinates me. I want to understand the manufacturing industry. I want to understand how the government, how the Federal Reserve, how these different organizations read the manufacturing industry, how they're able to tell if the manufacturing industry is doing well. What are the subcomponents of the manufacturing industry? Oh, wow, I see the ISM has all these different sections. Do you remember we had, like new orders and whatever? So I can't remember the exact sections. There were all the different survey data. You know how you just have the headline and then it's split into how manufacturing companies are doing relative to all the different categories, right? In terms of obviously new orders and suppliers and inventory, and are they hiring new people, and you know what I mean, all those some components. So it's really interesting. You can learn a lot about the current state of the manufacturing industry, and that's what you should be doing. Okay, and to me, that's why I did all of this. For me, first, it was, I'm actually genuinely interested in the manufacturing industry and how, central banks and these big organizations that are almost dictating our lives, how are they able to make decisions? Oh, wow. There's these surveys they're looking at, and okay, do you see what I mean? And then just as an added bonus, it was like, oh wow, actually you can use this in my trading. I can actually become a better trader. Because the problem is, what I notice, and I know this has gone completely off topic, but it's great. I think this is useful for you to know, because I like to share kind of my experiences and why I think I've been able to develop such consistency as a trader, is because I feel like I do these things for different reasons to other people. A lot of people are looking at ISM manufacturing because they want to figure out, how can I make money off it? It's completely wrong, okay? Because what will happen is you then become desperate to look for something, like some secret, like, oh, when this component says that, the market has to go up, and a complete wrong way to approach it. It has to be, you become a student of the data because you're genuinely interested in the data. And as a bonus, what will happen automatically then is you will really start to notice little things because you've put in the time. So look, I don't mean to lecture anyone. I know most of you are probably 10 times smarter than me and you understand all of this. In most things in life, I'm pretty useless. But I know when it comes to trading, I kind of do know my stuff. And I can, if you want any advice from me, is that, give it the time it deserves. Go through each one of these slowly. Even if you need to take a week off, it doesn't matter. You've got the rest of your life to apply this, right? But to learn it, give it the time it deserves. The ISM, we talked about it a lot. So payrolls was another one. I'm just summarizing here because this is the last section we're going to be doing on theory. As I said, I'm kind of relieved. In fact, I'll talk about the other bits in a moment. So I know there's some other data here, which I'm not going to cover with you for good reason, because you obviously, the 6 to 12 month business plan is to focus on these, and I'll talk about those in a second. But payrolls, we went through in a lot of detail. Do you remember the two different surveys? Obviously the household survey for the unemployment, establishment survey for payrolls. Again, don't just watch the video and then move on and say, oh, great, loved it. Now I understand payrolls. Don't take any offense by this, but you don't, right? You need to go to the website, the BLS website, who produce payrolls. You need to go, and I've shown you, right? You can copy me. I'm not saying you need to do stuff that I haven't shown you already. That's the whole point, and I understand. You pay me for that, and hopefully I've delivered tenfold. But just at least go and do the same things I'm doing. Go on the website. Spend some time reading it. Go off on tangents. Go and read everything you can on the website. Look at the surveys in detail. Understand how payrolls, I talked a lot about payrolls in the FOMC section. Understand, the Fed's mandate. Why is payroll so important? The Fed is the market. Again, I talked about a lot of that in my fundamentals webinar, which I put in the Pro and Foundation course. And if you're not doing the Pro Foundation course, drop me an email. I'll send you the webinar for free. Don't worry, it's in the Pro Foundation course, but I'll send you that. But otherwise, go and rewatch that in your Pro Foundation course. And I would have talked about it anyway in the FOMC sections, the 5 hours modules four that I split into 4 parts. But the point is, the Fed is the market, right? And just make sure I've not been covering anything whilst I've been talking it. Nope. Okay, so as we said, the Fed is the market, and what is one of their mandates from Congress? We talked about this a lot. Is for maximum employment, right? So that is why this piece of data is. Sorry, I just moved that out of the way. It's a bit distracting. I could see myself talking there. The payrolls is so important to the market. One, if not the most important piece of data. Why? Because the Federal Reserve or the FOMC rely on that so heavily, and also it's very early in the month, and it's a good kind of indication as to where GDP may land, because obviously it determines so many things, circular flow of income, and all the stuff I've been talking about. Obviously I don't want to cover that all here, we'll be here for hours. So my point is, make sure you've understood all of that before moving on. There's no point coming here and doing retail sales, and I'm actually going to do an amazing GDP summary. So stick around for that. If you do feel, okay, Envy's right, I need to go back and just double check everything. I've rushed a little bit here. Just watch the GDP summary and then you can go back again. But do you see what I mean? Don't just go too fast. Obviously, give it the time it deserves. CPI I went through in so much detail. I went through into the baskets, right? And I compared CPI to obviously the PCE measure, that PCE price index, right? That the FOMC likes to look at as preferred measure, although I said CPI is more focused on by traders because it's earlier in the month. Point is, inflation, price level, mandate, right? Again, price stability is the mandate from Congress. Don't necessarily have a target. But you see all these things I'm talking about. Don't just take my word for it, just because I said it. Watch the FOMC section. Spend a month, right? Maybe 2 months, 3 months on the Federal Reserve website. Read it, half an hour a day. You don't need to rush and suddenly start and implement this into your trading. Okay, maybe I should talk about this in the analysis section, but this is so important that you understand this. And because you really are doing yourself no favors by just, oh yeah, I understand it now. And Envy, I watched the CPI module, great. I can understand inflation. Let me just take your time. Honestly, it will pay dividends incredibly. Because in terms of analysis, this stuff, it's so dynamic. It isn't. The way that the market understands or reacts to inflation today is going to be very different in 6 months' time. Regimes are changing, market sentiment and feeling towards things are changing, and so you need to understand these things in depth, right? To the extent that almost I was able to explain them to you in the module. And to do that, anyone can do it. But obviously you need to then go and do the research and be comfortable that what I'm telling you is right. I'm 100% comfortable that what I've told you is right, but I want you to, right? I don't get anything out of it. I just want you to succeed. So that's why I suggest it. FOMC, same thing. Spend time on the Federal Reserve website, as I've already said. GDP, we're going to do a summary right now before retail sales, and I'll explain why. And then spend time on the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the BEA website. There's no rush. Can't even tell you. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. You can probably tell. This fascinating for me. This actually is the reason why I love. I've been very fortunate, and forgive me. This isn't going on a tangent. This is so important, because how many times do you get an institutional trader who's been doing this all his life actually share this with you? You won't see this anywhere in the public. Right, one of the reasons why I love this, I love trading, I love financial markets so much, is this type of stuff. So what do I mean by that? Like, we've all been there. You watch, and it doesn't matter if it's YouTube, and I don't mean to pick on YouTube and retail, but it's true. You watch YouTube, Instagram, whatever, YouTube videos, tutorials, and they're all saying, and again, I'm not bashing it, I'm just keeping it minimal, but I need to say this. And we know this. We watch these things. A lot of us will have careers, we'll be doing jobs, we'll be doing things where we're learning things. We're fascinated. It doesn't matter if you're a mechanic, you're doing more of a manual job, or whatever it is you're doing, you're landscaping in a garden or whatever it is. You're always learning something, right? It's like a job. You feel like I've developed a skill, and actually, with the mechanic, obviously there's a lot of moving parts with the car, and it's fascinating. You're learning something. Obviously, if you're more into a services type business, then again, you're learning so much, right? Doctor or lawyer or whatever it is, and doesn't matter. Or even if you're a personal trainer, you're learning about the body. It's fascinating. You're like, well, calorie deficit, surplus. Oh, wow, this exercise and train 3 times. You see what I mean? There's so many angles to it you're learning. It just is so disappointing when you go and watch YouTube and you're like, and then someone's like, hey, the market bounces here and there's a line, and do you see, it almost makes you feel brain dead. Like, hang on, is that trading? That's not trading. I actually want to learn something. There must be more to it. This is what this is, right? You know this. This is brilliant, right? It's because how much tangible stuff is there to actually learn. It's like proper. It's something proper, almost like a skill that you learn in a job. There's so many different angles to it. You actually feel like you're learning something. And my point is, that is why I love this business, is because I've been very fortunate to be doing this from day one, right? I've never had to go through the YouTube and retail and lines going up and down, and is that all it is, and feeling of, hey, I actually want to learn something. There must be more to this business than just that. And there is. Okay, here's your chance, okay, to actually do proper trading, okay, and learn. And, and I don't mean to give you a speech. I'm trying to motivate you to really take advantage of this opportunity to really get deep into this stuff, because that is why you should be interested in trading, right? Not because it's, there's some easy AB plus B equals C, because that's not how trading works. We know that. Is so you can actually, feel like there's something more than just watching some dude on tutorial on YouTube saying, hey, yeah, don't worry, just chuck a couple of things on your chart, and no, right? That is not proper, right? That's just, I don't know what that is, gambling, betting. This is what trading is all about. It's about developing a core skill set, and here's your opportunity to do that. So that's all I'm saying, okay? And hopefully that motivates you and you feel the same way, and you feel like, yeah, you know what, Envy's right. I am going to give this the time it deserves. Let me be true to my 6-month business plan, because this is actually the first opportunity I've had to actually really learn about proper trading, right? And I see that. I should be spending a week, a month, just learning about the FMCs. 6 months, go on the Federal Reserve, everything, read all the statements in the last year, analyze them, right? You don't even need to incorporate this into your trading right now. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm realizing this is so important. And a lot of this obviously is just kind of me talking to you from my own experience. I when I learned about FOMC, I didn't just start applying it straight away. I gave myself a few months. I realized this is so important. This is moving the market. Right, okay, I'm going to spend a few months understanding FOMC. I'm not even going to apply it in my trading right now. I'm going to first understand it, and then slowly I will apply it. So my point is, look, don't necessarily rush ahead. Spend enough time, maybe go back, watch all the modules and get familiar. Make sure, be honest with yourself. Have you really gone on all the websites? Not just watch me do it. Have you gone on the websites yourself? Have you looked a lot? So we're going to move on now, and apologies, I did talk a lot there, but I feel, hopefully you feel that it was important that I reminded you of these things. And because it is what I went through in my career, I did give myself a lot of time. And the bank forced me to, right, as well. In my first couple of years, they forced me to really spend a lot of time with all these things. What I would, the reason I'm talking about all of this is because what I'm going to do, right, so we've got retail sales. Okay, we are going to cover retail sales. What we need to do, in fact, just make sure it's been recording all of this. Maybe it's not a bad thing if it wasn't, because I did talk a lot there. No, it's recording. What I'm going to do, right, is we're going to do a GDP summary. The reason I mentioned all of this and said make sure you go through, etc., is because with GDP, I'd asked you, if you remember in the section, to go and read a lot. I asked you to do a lot of reading on the GDP sections. I believe it's like a 70-page handbook, and I did suggest, look, just go through it. It's not that long. I think it was that, wasn't it? GDP or one of the sections. But so do that, and I want you to do that. But what you should come to is a conclusion as to how, obviously we know GDP is everything. It's the end goal, right? It's basically the market. I mean, the Fed is the market, but it's the output of the market. It's the ultimate kind of measure of how, I was going to say how life is going, but we relate life to material goods. So ultimately life, our quality of life is determined by GDP. So ultimately is everything. And the obvious expenditure formula that I mentioned many times, so important. Everything ends up at that, right? We all want the economy to grow. If the economy grows, everyone's happy, markets obviously do well, and so on and so forth, right? So GDP is so important. It is ultimately the end goal, and I showed you that with the circular flow of income. Now, retail sales does feed a lot into GDP. There's a reason why I'm talking about GDP here again, because retail sales does feature quite a lot directly in GDP, and that's why a lot of people actually prefer to look at that compared to even the PCE, like the personal consumption expenditures, right? So market actually prefers looking at retail sales. Part of it is the timing. Obviously the PCE was released so late, and retail sales is early, but I'm also going to show you how the retail sales actually forms, not all of it, but quite a large part of it, especially the goods. If you remember, C is split into goods, and we'll have a look at that in a second. Goods and services. My handwriting's terrible, apologies, but retail sales actually does form quite a large part of the input data. Okay, so they do use, I don't want to get too complicated, but hopefully you've done the reading that I suggested you do on GDP, and you'll know retail sales is kind of used as a comprehensive piece of data, but also as a for their extrapolation purposes, for where you've got sections within the goods part of consumption expenditures, which I'll show you in a second, that are not directly within the retail sales elements, like the breakdown of retail sales. And also, obviously, you don't have the full 3 months of retail sales data, as you're going to see in a second. For the advanced GDP, there will only be 2 months of retail sales data, but again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But they are using retail sales a lot, okay, especially as some sort of control group or some sort of benchmark that they can then use to extrapolate some of the sections within goods, okay. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense to you right now. It will, but hopefully it should, because you would have done all the reading. That's why I gave the long speech about, please do the reading, right? Don't just keep jumping ahead all the sections. Understand them in depth, so that when I explain the GDP summary and all the other things, it will make a lot of sense. I mean, stick around for the GDP summary if you want, but ultimately I feel it's important that I bring everything together, because the GDP section, I went into so much detail. So obviously I think it's nice, call it a bonus, whatever, that I give you a summary of GDP, okay, and how GDP is put together It's nice as well because GDP is the last thing, right, in the timeline, and all roads lead to GDP. So call it a bonus. I'm happy to do it. I'm going to give you a summary of GDP. I felt like GDP was so intense. There were so many different moving parts. I do want to cap it off. I think I mentioned that a couple of times. I want to do a nice little summary, but it's also really important because I want to show you how retail sells. Whereas a lot of things like ISM and so on and so forth don't necessarily directly feed into, GDP. They're kind of more indications, very close indications of where GDP is likely to end up, because they're survey data and heavily related to the fortunes of the economy. Retail sales as a data piece actually they do use it a lot, the BEA, to help them for the consumption expenditures in particular. So we're going to look at that. So what I want to do with you, really interesting section I'm going to cover with you now. Hopefully you've already covered GDP in detail and you understand it like the back of your hand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it with you here, just very briefly as a recap. I say very briefly, it'll probably be a little while. So go over it, and if you don't understand it, make sure you go back, because I'm going to ask you to do some reading anyway. And just to repeat, okay, you might be wondering, hang on, it's supposed to be retail. Let me just make sure I'm not covering anything. Retail sales section. Don't know why I was looking at CPI there. It's supposed to be a retail sales section, but you'll see in a moment why I'm talking about it here, because I'm going to talk about retail sales quite a lot. I'm going to kill two birds in one stone, basically. I'm going to do a great, hopefully you find it great or useful, GDP summary section, and then obviously how the retail sales nicely fits into it. Then we'll talk about retail sales, and then we'll be done. Like I said before, and I will mention this at the end, I'm not actually going to cover any of this data here in this area here. Okay, it's not important. Obviously, the minutes we talked about already a little bit. These PPI housing data, PPI, the thing is, I've shown you in so much detail how you can go onto these websites. I could have just said, here you go, ISM website, and now go and figure out payrolls. I didn't. I went through every single one of these for your 6 to 12 month business plan in so much detail. You're probably better than me at investigating pieces of data now and how to really understand them. So all I want you to do is obviously use that so easily for you now. Things like PPI, and you can just go here. Obviously, I've already showed you that. Where's it gone? For things like, for example, PPI. Let me see if I can find it. There you go. PPI, open it up. Just go to the website, BLS, and obviously you can go and read about it and find out how they put it together and all that kind of stuff, right? It's not going to serve any purpose. Me doing it, I've already covered that in so much detail, how data is, obtained and so on and so forth. It'll be a nice little exercise for you, okay? And maybe I'll even talk about that towards the end and give you that as an exercise. I feel it will also be distracting in your first 6 to 12 months to worry too much about in detail. You've got so much on your plate. I've just told you to spend a month on each of these. Go and read the websites, hour a day, and then yeah. So can you see, for me to throw this in now on top of that, it'd be too overwhelming. And you're more than capable of doing all this stuff in about a year's time. Once you've learned this like the back of your hand, you can then go and do it, right? It's going to be too distracting for me, and it doesn't serve any purpose as part of the business plan. Obviously, I'll leave that for you to do. This is more than adequate for you to, put yourself ahead of 99.9% of the market. And I'm even talking institutional traders there. Become the best at this. As long as you follow the speech I gave at the start. Spend as long as needed on each of these pieces of data till you understand them like the back of your hand. Then obviously the results will follow. So look, coming back to GDP,